welcome everyone. I think that we already can start. My name is Veronika Movchan. I'm a director in scientific work of the Institute of Economic Research and Policy Consulting, and it is my pleasure to welcome you at our today's meeting. First of all, technical issues. I would like to mention that we have simultaneous interpretation going on. The event is conducted in 3 languages. It is Ukrainian, Polish, and English. So please choose the proper language channel. The channel can be found at the bottom of your screen, interpretation or globe icon. Choose that channel that you would like to have. Now let's move to why we are here. So it's our today's event. That's already the third online event that take place within project Weight of Ukraine to European Union, a Polish experience. It is a project that we implement together with IED and WEI, and it is financed with the support of International Renaissance Foundation and Foundation of Open Society. Our project, obviously from its name, is supporting preparation of Ukraine and Ukrainian entrepreneurs to membership in the European Union while analyzing experience of Poland, while accessing and working in European markets, and also Ukrainian efforts towards integration. And this project includes, as I have mentioned, 6 online events dedicated to sectoral matters. And we have already conducted energy and transport events. And today we are very happy that we will be talking about more medicine market. For future, I would like to invite you that we will have separate discussion concerning agriculture, construction materials, and wood processing and metal industry. But that's ahead of us. And today we have public discussion that we called European Health, Poland and Ukraine on a single pharmaceutical market. Dear colleagues, once again, welcome, and I would like to give the floor to Łukasz Wojdyga for moderating of this event. Łukasz, the floor is yours, please. Thanks a lot, Veronika, for introduction to our today's meeting. I hope that the quality of translation, of interpreting will be good because Polish interpretation is a little bit too quiet. Can we please have Polish interpreting a little bit louder? So I welcome everyone. I will be a moderator of our today's event. And as Veronika has already mentioned, it is our third meeting that is dedicated to certain areas that we would like to discuss, that we are dealing with concerning adapting of Ukrainian market to the conditions of European market. And today we would like to focus on pharmaceutical market, and I would like to welcome our panelists from the Polish side and Ukrainian side, to is Małgorzata Maurer-Oxley, who's the advisor on policy spheres in the sphere of health, Pharma Group. It's one of the biggest pharmaceutical companies in Poland. Alexandra Sienkiewicz, Director of Health Forum, Union of Entrepreneurs and Employers of Poland, Dr. Jerzy Griglewicz, expert on the market of medical services, and who is the representative of Lazarus University in Warsaw. And from Ukrainian side, Ms. Lyubov Akulenko. And Ms. Lyubov Akulenko, who is the founder and executive director of Ukrainian Center of European Policy, and Oksana Kashentseva, who's the head of the Department of IT and Human Rights. in Intellectual Property Institute of our academy. And she's also a specialist in pharmaceutical market. So I welcome all of you cordially, dear ladies and gentlemen. Ukraine started its way to the European Union long time ago, many years ago, but unfortunately, Russian invasion made this process a little bit faster. It's probably the only positive aspect in all these events that Ukraine probably will join the EU faster. So the sphere of the health and pharmaceuticals is very important for Europeans. And the pandemic that lasted for 2 years proved that to us, the pandemic of COVID-19. But in the whole Europe, we have this problem of aging society. In Ukraine, this problem will be a problem as well. It has always been the pharmaceuticals, a great industry in Ukraine, even during the Soviet times. And what is interesting is that some Ukrainian companies enter Polish market. Pharma company that is actively on the market, and but nevertheless the quality of products is sometimes can be doubted, the quality of medical products in Ukraine. And I can say that the beginning of the process of Ukraine's assessing the EU is a great chance for Ukraine, and it plays particular role for pharmaceutical market or in the sphere of medical products, where Ukraine, with its experience, with its factories, can really be very active as a participant member of the market. Ukraine also is a potential market in a clinical research. It's an interesting sphere, and we also have the question: how possible is a cooperation between Polish and Ukrainian entrepreneurs in pharmaceutical sphere? We also have to discuss transport issues, because previous year we were talking about agrarian market. Lots of controversies are there, but it looks like pharmaceutical market is that sphere where cooperation is possible. Also Ukraine can be extremely important basis for producing active components for medicine, and the work has been done in the European Commission or in the European Parliament to guarantee maybe not self-sufficiency, but at least something so that European countries are not dependent on Indian and Chinese markets in this sphere. And I would like to start with Dr. Jerzy Griglevich, and he will discuss, he will tell us shortly about the pharmaceutical condition situation with pharmaceutical sector in Poland, especially since we are waiting for implementation of pharmaceutical package that will be the first in 20 years renewal of European legislation in pharmaceutical sphere, and there will be just gigantic changes concerning the look of the appearance of this market. So he will now tell us how the pharmaceutical market looks like. Thank you for the invitation. First and foremost, I would like to start with a very important thing, in particular, that we have to understand that if we are talking about the EU, then we do not have a joint policy in health. We have agrarian policy in other spheres, but each European state member has their own policies on health protection. And very often there's absolutely different spheres of medical services or insurance, or it's different budgeting systems, or systems that are that have different bodies that had them. And every state has a para budget system. We have one state payer, it's International Health Fund, responsible for financing all payments connected with state financing. If you're talking about pharmaceutical sectors, that we have to realize that we have double financing. we have state and private financing. What is the trait of our system is that we have pretty huge expenses, private. So if we're talking about refundation system, that it relies on three pillars. The first, it's refundation of into pharmacies, where they pay additional money for pharmacies. Also, there are medical technologies that are funded within a medicine program. It's clearly defined and it has certain access criteria to medicine, and it ensures effectiveness in treatment. Very often, it's some expensive types of treatment that rely on innovative payments, and they are financed by state money 100%. And we also have chemotherapy medicine. They are also financed for free for patients within the contract of the National Health Foundation. Our system of health has lots of benefits if to talk about state expenses, because in the opinion of lots of experts, it's pretty effective. So for relatively low amount of money, Poland can provide access to big amount of treatments, types of treatments. And now this pharmacy refundation, so it's uh, several billions of zlotys. If to talk about innovative treatment within medicine program, it's 8 billion of zlotys. If it's chemotherapies, and 4 billion uh, zlotys. So we see huge growth of new elements, new parts, new treatments that they can get refunded for. And in pharmaceuticals, everything is based on this law on the foundation that has been functioning in Poland for 10 years already. And within this law, certain solutions were found that might be guidelines for Ukrainian side. And what is important is that international concerns also try to get this foundation, but they need to remember that the price in Poland cannot be higher, so it has to be the lowest in comparison with other European countries. So these countries sometimes put such prices for their medicine that they offer to other countries, and it is the element of discussion. And as a result of the discussion negotiations, we also can lower such prices. And Ministry of Health actually agrees on those prices, and if they manage to do this, then they have then they sign a contract. It's important because if it's a transparent process, it takes place on different levels. The solutions are not made by some separate individuals, so implementation of such solutions during all this time, we have had no claims for illegal actions and non-transparent actions. So these solutions are made by separate teams of specialists, and the last instance, that's Minister of Health, and he makes the final decision. And this is this element of transparency, which has huge practical uh, meaning, and it improved situation significantly and impacted the results con concerning cheaper medicine. It is also important that we are dealing with parallel experts, and it brings to the fact that medicine in Poland is pretty cheap, and that medicine is exported abroad, and very often it leads to huge complication of access to medicine. Ministry of Health very often publishes information that there is lack of medicine because in the European Union, the export and import uh, issues are legally regulated, but here through the Ministry of Health, we sometimes have problems with the access to some medicines. And basically, we cannot put it in one sentence, but the main argument, the main document, strategic document, if we are talking about reforms in Poland, because we're talking only about financing, but actually it's a plan, and a plan of reforms. And within this plan of reforms, one of three actions is expanding of Polish sector of pharmaceuticals. So the need to produce active ingredients, production of active ingredients. Fortunately, our system and some elements of our native national pharmaceutical industry is still here, and it is pretty strong system in our country. Not only those companies that have been working that were working during the socialism, they presented a little bit, but created lots of national companies in Poland that are based on private capital, and gives lots of chances for development, in particular in the context of cooperation with Ukraine. And it seems that in this context, we have lots of chances. Thank you, Mr. Doctor. I would like to ask similar question to of Ms. Valeria. Um, how we can discuss this and describe this Ukrainian sector, how it looks like, and if we are talking about refounding of for medicine, how it works in UK. So you have lots of national companies, or mostly you have global giants who influences the market. Yes, thank you, thank you. Welcome everyone. First of all, I would like to mention that despite all those problems that we have right now in our country because of this full-fledged invasion, Ukrainian system of health continues developing, continues the reforms in the health sphere continue as well. Active development of Ukrainian legislation, its harmonization with European legislation. If to if we talk about modern condition of our system, the more modern state of our system, that our experts say that they observe lack of financing because funds first and foremost go to some military needs and then to other spheres, in particular health. But despite all of this, and also taking into account our reform that is ongoing, we have range of new programs. Our state regulation, price regulation is developing, and it's not only that's not only for medicine, but also for my other medical products. Because of the war military needs, we have new needs. It's rehabilitation, transplantation, donors, blood infusions. So because of active military actions, we also have high need for blood products. And because of this, of course, system is reacting to all of this and adapting. Also, Ukrainian system of health has high level of digitalization. We are actively moving towards this direction. If to talk about modern condition of legislative regulation, 2 years ago in Ukraine, a new law about medicine was adopted, and this law is not effective right now. It is presupposed that after 30 months after martial law is cancelled, it will come into force. But we know that the Ministry of Health and other bodies work actively to make it faster. There are offers to already use this law starting from the 1st of January 2025. Because of this, all our state bodies work actively on developing secondary acts and secondary legislation and normative acts involving business associations, patient associations. So that's why, summing all of this up, I would like to emphasize that despite such difficult conditions and challenges, our system continues its development, and we are moving forward actively, in particular to European integration through harmonization of our legislation. That's all I wanted to say now. Thank you. Then I have a question to Oksana Kashentsova. Maybe you would like to add something to this picture about Ukrainian pharmaceutical market. Thank you for such an opportunity. And first of all, I would like to express gratitude to all Polish citizens for their support, for being with us in such difficult times. Concerning the market in that part my colleague was talking about, I am a representative of the Institute of Intellectual Property, and I'm also involved in the work of UNDP program. And I also work in some, I used to work in some WHO program. So our research showed, and if you're talking about reimbursement and about such body as Mr. Lukasz mentioned at the beginning, we have national system of health. So lion's share of medicines that are reimbursed by the national health service, they're so-called routine medicine. And there we have representatives of our pharmaceutical industry, and even some Marion research showed us that it's up to 70%. At the same time, highly technological medicine that are used in specialized medical treatment, mostly it's oncology, but not only oncology, it's also orphan diseases. Of course, represented here, we have huge pharmaceutical companies represented. To have access to the newest medicines in Ukraine in 2021, implemented the Institute of such assistant entrance agreement, so-called. It is also present in the European Union. It seems to me that it has been there since 2000. 23. It's a pretty difficult tool. We had some close negotiations, but as my colleagues have already mentioned, due to digitalization and due to the fact that we have the opportunity to still have negotiation processes concerning access to such medicine and special price for Ukraine on e-resources, if there is a need, we have access to such information. Right now, we have very active work, and when we have a discussion, I will share with Monika Movchan the national strategy of intellectual property, where I am an expert in intellectual property of pharmaceutical sphere. I'm working in this area. It's the strategy till 2030. We hope that it will be already the period of our victory and in Ukraine's recovery. Also, we formed the principle of IP, intellectual property regulations, for two such stages. For the period of war, right now, we are working with streets treatment, Article 73, security exceptions, and we are trying to free ourselves from certain commitments in the sphere of intellectual property within what the TRIPS treatment with treat allows us during the period of war. And then later we understand that we will have to harmonize our legislation in the sphere of intellectual property fully. If you're talking about medicine, then it's law about medicine and patents of for medicines in accordance with the directives of the European Union. But here we have certain concerns. Ukraine is not member of European Patent Convention, and this office does not validate its patents and preserves its sovereign expertise. But intellectual property is not a tool of the European Union. We preserve our obligations, our commitments within the association agreement between EU and Ukraine and treats agreement. We have a very sincere discussion here. We're trying to balance. On the one hand, we have to use this historic chance, and our government is moving very fast to the way of full adaptation of directives and regulations of the European Union to with our legislation. At the same time, dear partners, you see that we have to survive, and sometimes intellectual property becomes a service. If to compare it with right of people for life and health, and of course we have treats opportunities. It's very difficult, but we are ready to share our worries and our experience, and we encourage our international experts to give us advice, because fortunately Europe up till now, up till full-scale invasion, hasn't had experience of using security exceptions article. We have to pave our way here. We are afraid to make mistakes, but at the same time, we understand that we need to be courageous because we have to save our people. This strategy will be public soon. If to talk about the most sensitive items, we have here representatives of our business associations, legal companies. We cooperated with Artsinger closely. We conducted certain consultations, and not only. And now our head of patent office just 2 days ago visited Munich, the Institute of Max Planck, where we now also conducting research on how we can manage to maintain this balance of full implementation of directives and regulations of the European Union, but at the same time, not to use security exceptions in our legislation. And we have very difficult matters for us. It's compulsory license. And here we are looking closely at the position of the European Commission. It is extremely helpful for us. It's just it's as if we implement European legislation, we have all legal foundation for this, and for Bular exceptions are always extremely important for us, but they are not written really well in our Ukrainian legislation, but will give us opportunity to work with generic medicines faster, and also supplementary protection certificates, so-called SPC, that in the European Commission, they also have their specific position. This is capability of our pharmaceutical sphere to produce products for experts, where supplementary production certificate already does not have patent protection. So what I can say that I see that we are focused more from the point of view of business, production of medicine today. So I probably am not going to take lots of your time here, and I will not mention about huge problem, and we really need consultation in this sphere. It's retail market, because what's going on in pharmacy sector in Ukraine is absolutely not possible and acceptable. Our pharmacies, these are actually supermarkets, network supermarkets of selling medicine, and we already looked at the experience of Germany and Poland, and we would like to adapt this experience, but it's a separate block, and from on behalf of patient organizations, on behalf of our institute and the member of working group that is working on national strategy, we need such consultations, how to reform retail market to integrate into common European market with the time. Getting back to business. So exceptions, compulsory license, and supplementary protection certificates. These are those spheres where our farm industry, we have pretty competitive, powerful pharmacological industry, and they would like to maintain their positions. And of course, consultations with international partners, we understand it perfectly well, and we do not want to turn pharmaceutical industry into a conflict that happened in the sphere of the agrarian sphere. Here also protection of agrarian products, a separate sphere. If you invite us to listen to the experts, we'll be very grateful. But to sum it up, we are developing the national strategy. Soon we are going to make it public. We are balancing between directives and European Union acquis. And we for during 6 years, we are trying to have a legislation written in such a way that investors can come to us, that they shouldn't be afraid. We need to have innovative medicine. We don't want our pharmaceutical industry to fall, because it turned out to be extremely resistant, and it managed to sustain, and it helped patients and economy of Ukraine. But at the same time, we are ready to be competitors at the market of generic medicine products. That's shortly, and thanks a lot for this opportunity. Yes, yes, please. And hello once again. I would like to mention that Ukrainian pharmaceutical medicine are on the world level despite strategy of the war, but thinking positively, every tragedy or every crisis leads to changes, and I hope that these changes are in the positive way. And focusing on the positive spheres, Ukrainian pharmaceutical players, I know that they are exporting their products even to 80 countries, as far as I know, that it's huge potential. And what Lukasz mentioned, actually Poland and Ukraine, they are leaders in medicine products and active ingredients in Europe. And I would like to emphasize that Ukraine takes part in all possible events and occupies a significant part in European system of healthcare. And problem with medicine access disturbs lots of people. So part of active ingredients also can make it challenging for Ukrainian-Polish cooperation. The challenge, in our opinion, is the quality of production, and so to sell medicine to the EU, Ukraine should have European certificates that have been mentioned earlier. It has to introduce safety systems, but Poland also can learn a lot from Ukrainian colleagues. It has better system of control of medicine safety, and it is very important in the context of cooperation. We also know that Ukraine already follows Polish example, so we have some positive things on here already. That's actually what I wanted to say, summing up previous speakers. You're actually a little bit faster here, because that's what I wanted to ask you. Now I'm giving the floor to you actually already. And we were talking about the fact that Ukraine has production capacities, staff, technologies, but still quality is doubted. So could you please tell how in Poland this way took place? While delivering while obtaining whole harmonization, obtaining all the certificates, how long did it last, and did we manage to get this European level? It's still going on actually, but it seems to me, as Dr. Griglavich already mentioned, for Poland, it took some time, but we managed to do this, and we also were learning, and we also were looking at how Western countries and our neighbors are behaving, and I assume that our Eastern uh, neighbors looking at us can take lots of lessons. We are learning from you, if to talk about digitalization, because I know that digitalization system in healthcare system in Ukraine is advanced. Everything is done already in an innovative way, and we would also like to learn this digitalization in healthcare system, but you can learn from us how to overcome all these processes. And we know that here we are also talking about manufacturing practices, because as far as I know, those companies that work in Ukraine, they already had a GMP external audits. Ukrainian regulator also conducted standardized control in accordance to European standards, and there is also a matter of recognizing Ukrainian GNP and its compliance with European regulators. And it seems to me that it looks pretty optimistic, because Ukraine has already done a lot in its legislation, and if we manage to do this, then you will manage to do it as well. Just monitor what's and you can see what was happening in our country. Thank you. We also have a representative of this sphere with us, Małgorzata Maurer-Oxley, and there I have a question to her. What Polish experience of Polish enterprises in the sphere of EU accession can be useful for Ukraine and for Ukrainian pharmaceutical sector? As we have already mentioned, this is a very well-developed sphere, and Ukrainian companies also export their medicine to more than 50 countries around the whole world, offering more than 100 products, the amount of which is growing with each year. So how Polish experience can be useful for Ukrainian companies? Thank you for the invitation, dear ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Lukasz. It is extremely important question, because this integration that we had, and we are talking about years from 2004 up till now, actually till 2008. So we had 4 years to adapt Polish market, Polish economy. We had to register more than 2,500 of medicinal products. We, as a company, and our portfolio at that time was around 500 medicines. And now it's 700. It's medicine in different forms, and it was pretty difficult. We changed completely the national registration formula to the formula within the procedure of decentralization and the procedure of self-acknowledge. If you're talking about central procedure, then it was only about some modern um, medicine, all innovative medicine and some modern generics, but also we had some specialized specific medicine. Here we're talking about generic medicine. In the case of our company, Polypharma, and we completely changed the way we were giving documents to the producers and how we were reviewing such documents by the commission that registered to such medicines. And it required full restructuring of the process, and we submitted documents in the electronic way. So we had to place everything at the electronic platform that was common for whole Europe. And suddenly we realized the fact that during those 4 years of transitional period, we had lots of medicine that we had to register this platform, several thousand. The biggest challenge for us was to build this process, but also we had verification process. So here manufacture practicing that Oksana has mentioned about, it was just a check of control of the quality that also had to be in compliance with the EU standards. Of course, with the time, such demands became easier. I'm talking now about 2004, but it was difficult. And nevertheless, we were talking that Ukrainian producers have high level of production. They also changed the GMP there, but it seems to me that nevertheless, while taking a strategic decision about Ukraine's integration, we might assume, and probably Ukraine will demand this form of audit. So basically, all enterprises in manufacturing enterprises in Ukraine will have to get this GMP, the certificate that will be in compliance with European norms. And it is not easy, of course, but for us it also was not easy because it required change of infrastructure, way of work, and learning of specialists. And this is the process that consists of many different stages. And actually, all these processes are very complex. Someone has already mentioned about pharmaceutical survey, because in pharmacies where we're talking about retail, we have a little bit too much freedom, and this is also the process Ukrainian producers had to go through. Mostly these were pharmacies, and pharmaceutical survey also uh, had its rules. So that's if we talk about pharmacy before the reform. Somebody didn't feel that well, they came to pharmacy and asked for some kind of medicine. It was like this before 2004. So previously, pharmacists in Poland were advisors, so they were advising and selling medicine. In the European Union, it's not possible. Everything is clearly defined there. And in Poland, the European Union also had new price making rules. Countries, states have the right to have their own prices and their own reimbursement rules, but there is a certain level of transparency that uh, has to be faced, and certain check of documents. So this is actually really needed process. Additionally, we also had process of reimbursement and uh, control of selling to see uh, whether everything was in compliance. This is also probably the way that Ukraine will have to face. And what else was difficult for us? I think that that's probably how we were trying to conquer the European market. We are representative of company that produces generic medicine. So we are producer that is governed by certain market rules. So we compete with each other. We have a producer, let's say, of one medicine and producers of generic medicine that repeats it. There are several of them, and there are several certain rules also that we had because of the European Union. And now competitive advantage of Europe is not the fact that I have generic medicine, but whether my price is competitive enough, because I, as a producer, am not a charity organization. So that's why we have to generate some kind of income for our owners. And on the one hand, it's economic challenge, this European market and competition with their producers and their distributors that have their rules as well, and regulative element. It was difficult, but we already are learned. And now I would like to give the floor to Lukasz because it seems to me that there are lots of spheres where Ukraine might pay attention to, and it will face lots of challenges during the EU integration. Thank you. Thank you for this voice from the inside of the industries. But you have mentioned also about regulatory policy. And now I would like to ask Mr. Dr. Jerzy Griglevich to say several words concerning how European legislation influences Polish pharmaceutical market, because we remember that these 20 years uh, that were between today and the beginning of negotiations with Ukraine, that's huge period of time. So during those 20 years, Europe created lots of very significant bureaucracy, we can say, bureaucratic environment. Uh, And that's actually the question, whether it helps with regulation and safety of patients, or it limits and constrains its activity, in particular for companies that produce generic medicines that were mentioned at the beginning. I do not have answer to this question, and I would like to ask Ukrainian partners here and to tell him this message that entering the EU uh, based on EU acquis. And I would like to say that our negotiators were very effective if to talk about European protection. First of all, we had the whole range of normative acts that, at least at the very beginning, provided this opportunity to maintain our pharmaceutical industry while creating certain decisions that made it easier for our companies. If you're talking about um, intellectual property, of course, we can view it that as a solution that gave the opportunity for our industry. I don't know whether it's possible to do now in 20 years, but it's always, we always need to talk about that. During negotiations, you need to try to do everything possible so that your area, your industry, despite such rigid normative acts of the EU, still does not suffer. So to maintain this industry that provide lots of prospects, it's difficult. So we have a Polish company, Polpharma. It started from the scratch, and but I know that Polish companies, lots of them were bought out by international concerns, and they just took over Polish companies. And Poland actually also in communistic times was a very significant player on the market. Probably we were the second state in this sphere that in the sphere of medicine safety was really well developed. If to talk about normative acts of the EU, then here EU gives certain range of directives that of course have to be implemented in this country. in the legislation of this country. And actually, this law also about reimbursement influenced our situation. So it's a very significant challenge that you're going to face, adapting of your normative acts to EU directives. So during the discussion, you'll have to have certain transitional periods during the negotiations. You'll have to get such periods and to have the chance that if you face such bureaucracy EU system, make it easier for you. It's extremely important to try during the negotiation to uh, try to achieve certain conditions that will help Ukrainian pharmaceutical industry to live through this process in a pretty smooth way and to adapt, because it's extremely important. And also it is important to use such solutions that will be beneficial for you first and foremost, because you are in a difficult situation. You have the war going on, and there are also certain financial provision items of the financial industry, on the pharmaceutical industry through reimbursement, because it's also pretty widespread element, and it might have certain consequences, but the main aim is access to medicine, to therapy for patients. And what we had in Poland is that patients, poorer patients that did not have money, always did not want to buy medicine because they were high financial barriers, and it was important. In Poland, we created certain mechanisms recently, and they increased the state's responsibilities for access to medicine, in particular for elderly generation. And what is important, Lukasz has already mentioned that several years ago we implemented this mechanism that for those people who are older than 75, there is a certain list of medicine that is absolutely free. And of course, now within election campaign, it is decreased to 60 years. And of course, it is financial burden for the state is now higher, but for people, elderly generation that very often have low salaries, it gives access to treatment. And that is really this mechanism that is worth viewing for our Ukrainian partners, and this mechanism should be offered. We also need to remember that consequences of our current state can be reflected on financial opportunities of Ukrainians, because treatment might be not accessible for them. Thank you, not affordable. Thank you. And now let's move to Ukrainian normative acts. And what stage right now we have legislative changes or adaptation of Ukrainian legislation towards those EU rigid demands, in particular in good manufacturing practice sphere, concerning production of medicine, whether Ukrainian standards are in compliance with European standards, and how armed conflict with Russia uh, puts to a halt such legislation. Where are we, and which stage, if we're talking about Ukrainian legislation at this moment? Valeria, have you heard us? Yes, yes, yes. I was waiting for interpreting to finish. Thank you. Let me comment on that. And first, I would like to start with that Ukraine right now is not at the initial stage of harmonizing its legislation. In Ukraine, it's already a long-lasting process. It has been for at least 10 years, maybe even more already. So it's a regular gradual process. As I have mentioned already, we adopted new main law about medicine, medicinal products, and it's like main legislation act if we are talking about medicine and medicine production in particular. This law is considered to be harmonized with the EU. And with the adoption of this law, it is presupposed that we will have compliance of terminology between Ukrainian and European one because it is important precondition. So it is a unified regulation. Also, this in this project, we um, have proper production practices written out, and like basically all practices, in particular production practices, GMP. That's why basically it is implementing new regulation and more harmonized, more acute one, more accurate one on the level of production of medicine, because actually we got lots of norms on some kind of secondary level of decrees of Ministry of Health, certain orders, other legislation acts in this sphere, but it is presupposed currently that it all will be gathered and unified in one law. And that's how we tried, as we have already mentioned, to achieve unification with the European legislation so that actually we can have this turnover of products in a smoother way. So that's it basically. Thanks a lot. So, Oksana Kashantseva, maybe you would like to add something as well. Yes, I would like to add and actually to support my colleague in the part of quality because still in 2018, 19, 2020, we the head of State Expert Center of the Ministry of Health that conduct expertise for safety and effectiveness of medicine. They implemented the whole legislation and the protocol of research that European Medical Agency is using. If to talk about bioaccess, bioequivalence capacity, we still have it in the laboratories. We are afraid to say that we have something because every minute we might have the situation that we will not have it. So that's why while we still have them, we still have opportunities to conduct certain research. Concerning turnover, yes, if to talk about, as my colleagues have mentioned, the new edition of law about medicine is a revolutionary step in the part of parallel import of medicines in Poland. You're already in the European Union, in the center of the European Union, and you have regional principle. And this regional process of medicine turnover. But at the same time, in Ukraine, we used to have monopoly of owners of registration certificates, and that's why in Ukraine, with all those economic difficulties that we had even before the war, with lots of regulations, medicines were more expensive than in neighboring countries. Nevertheless, we couldn't import them from other sources. There was monopoly of the owner of registration certificate. Right now, we are trying to deal with that. Moreover, several weeks ago, and it's a public information, the committee in the sphere of medicine, the subcommittee of the Committee of Nation Health, voted and supported changes that will allow us to launch this mechanism of parallel import of medicines starting from the 1st of January 2025. For patients, this is a huge support because we understand that healthy competition will influence price making. That's registered in Ukraine medicine, but it is all will be presupposed and developed on the level of secondary acts. And as far as I know now, Ministry of Health has just launched so-called fast track and the development of such normative acts in the sphere. And the colleague from Poland has already mentioned, and I would like to support it, but it's really a separate direction to this reform of pharmacy business in Ukraine, the reform of selling medicine, the retail. It will be very painful reform for Ukraine. It will have huge resistance because if you look at our research that are publicly available, that pharmacy business is has pretty aggressive policy. Moreover, so we have conclusions of anti-monopoly committee, and it is written there that in the price of medicine in Ukraine, we have up to 50% of that price that is formed through marketing negotiations and lobbying of medicine. Uh, for the first table, as we call it. We have to fight against this, and I understand that it's a very difficult way. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Thanks a lot. But also, I would like to clarify because we were talking about legislation norms. You were talking about pharmacy norms, about normative acts concerning medicine, but I would like to ask about clinical trials in Ukraine as well, because in Poland for several last years we have had work on the law that came into force in 2023. So how is the regulation of clinical trials looks like in Ukraine, and whether it's in compliance with European directives and demands, right? This sphere is really lagging behind right now. So what we managed to do since the beginning of war. So 1 month ago, we registered draft law that was made together with the European Business Association and patient organizations in the part of strengthening responsibility, criminal responsibility, at the same time taking away this certain irregularities, and this draft law is already registered and presupposes certain changes. But at the same time, clinical trials are regulated in a very fragmented way. We have we have full understanding of creating a separate normative act that will regulate this sphere. There is a demand from patient as well, because we have popularization and such awareness campaigns that it is access to innovative treatment. Pharmaceutical business is interested in it as well, so that Ukraine can be more integrated into clinical trials. We have pretty low percentage as of now. We also have lack of legislation that presupposes mandatory insurance of those patients and I'm not even talking about financial risks of sponsors of clinical trials and so on. So this is still tabula rasa in Ukraine, and it requires development, and we're extremely interested in it because there are lots of clinical trials that were withdrawn from aggressor country, and that's why they could have moved to Ukraine, and we are very interested in this. So here we still have a lot of work to do together, and if a Polish delegation, Polish experts could help us in this sphere, it would be extremely valuable for us. Thank you. Probably in the sphere of normative acts about clinical trials, Poland can be interesting partner. We monitor it constantly because this law was implemented previous year for us, and the work on this law took some time. And concerning commercial and non-commercial clinical trials in Poland, and this sphere has just started its development, but I think that Dr. Jerzy Griglevich can tell more about this. Yes, so the key point in the sphere of clinical trials is that this year we already have compensation fund that reimburses patients for some negative consequences of such clinical trials. And right now, this speaker on human rights is dealing with this. Previously, this speaker was dealing with vaccines, injections, and so on, and was working in a pretty high level. And very often, when people after COVID vaccination had some negative effects, they got reimbursed, because we know that producers of COVID-19 did not have any responsibility for adverse effects, and somebody had to be responsible for this, and this system is acting very transparently in our country. We had information about all the adverse effects and what was the size of reimbursement for patients, and now we would like to move this experience to clinical trials, and I think that it will give us a certain feeling of safety and will increase responsibility of this area for potential negative events, because now it's going to be controlled and checked by the governmental body, and it is important for those companies that those commissions that provide reimbursement for patients, and it will also guarantee that it is that sphere that in Poland has pretty often is not transparent. There are lots of conflicts of interest, lots of checks, audits, and they were not transparent, and different connections were found out with Research Institute of Pharmaceutical Companies. So we need to conduct this now in uh, three-party format, so we can have researchers, pharmaceutical companies, and also first and foremost centers or hospitals that conduct such clinical centers, so they all can take part in one negotiation. And also it is important that certain institutions are now created that are dealing only with clinical trials, and it also minimizes the risk from this double financing, because clinical trials might be financed at the same time, and it seems to me that in this sphere we have huge progress. I see a hand raised, please. Hello, my name is Katarina, and I'm the representative of European Business Association, the Committee of Healthcare. Thank you for talking about clinical trials in Ukraine. I would like to emphasize that our committee on clinical trials, and my colleague Irina Manzi is working actively in this sphere. We have lots of practical developments, and in the future, we would like to somehow contact with you or maybe exchange our experience and show our developments and cooperation with you. Thank you. Thanks a lot. I think that we might definitely have such an opportunity, and I'm looking at the time. The time is running out, but we still have several topics that we would like to discuss. And now I would like to talk about creation of modern pharmaceutical sector. It is three values. First of all, it's meeting basic needs of patients through access to cheap medicine and accessible medicine. Also, high level of innovativeness of such medicine. The world is changing, new technologies are emerging, and at the same time meeting high standards of quality, effectiveness, and safety of such medicine. And now we have a question. Maybe let's start from Ms. Sienkiewicz. How Poland is trying to combine these three values, which do not look controversial, but interest of different groups might differ. Please switch on your microphone. Unfortunately, there is no Ukrainian interpreting, and I cannot interpret into English. Sorry, but we can hear Ukrainian and Polish translation at the same time in one channel. Thank you. So getting back to Lukasz, you mentioned about access to medicine, to innovations, and it's very significant factors from the point of view of Polish company that is producing generic medicine and is pretty famous. Maybe Ms. Małgorzata Maurer can add a little bit more here, but of course, such medicine should be available and accessible in the market, but they also should be innovative, because the world is changing, active ingredients are changing, and illnesses are changing, diseases are changing, and the safety here is the basic component that has to minimize the risk of different adversary effects. And I would like to give the floor to Małgorzata Maurer, or maybe somebody else, if maybe somebody else would like to talk. Małgorzata, please. I think that the concept of accessibility of medicine, that's a little bit different elements, but access very important here. So the product, the presence of products on the market, and also price availability, so whether people can afford that. In the world, we have such a situation that this innovative component is very important. We all want our product to have some innovative elements. This innovation can be about very huge range of aspects, concerning aspects and about the information about medicine and access to patients and to hospitals. In generic production, innovative component is actually some kind of new molecule, a new formula that is a new therapeutic solution. In generic medicine, we just repeat this molecular, this formula. Innovative component can be in technology of production, technologies that that are environmentally friendly, or technologies that might use some other elements for synthesis of those products. So that's why technological innovations, but we also have lots of innovations connected with the form of the product. So if we change, for example, the way of how you take that medicine, not 3 times per day, but 1 time per day, and generic industry, taking into account that it is in Poland and in Ukraine, it will be working on such solutions. Innovations in Europe are regulated highly. Not all financing programs, but some of them still have rely on innovative solutions, and infrastructure here is not taken into account as in the first period of European integration. And basically, our way is not going this way. So not only innovation is important, but what has been mentioned already is that in particular country for citizens of its country, all basic medicine should be available. And each country after the COVID, and I think that Ukraine can also provide us here even new information for research. So the better supply chains work, the bigger are chances that the patients will get this medicine. And actually, the supply chain also plays huge role in the safety that we were talking about here, that patients should receive medicine on a timely manner. Also, there were initiatives of 21 European countries that signed the document that encourages the European Commission to ensure such zone of medicine and protects them from faulty medicines on the level of the European Union. This is the initiative that we are supporting. The whole sector, Medicines for Europe, well known in European Business Association. We are cooperating for the sake of Euro integration of Ukraine. And at this moment, it's also extremely important for Ukraine to have its own production of active ingredients that are critical for its patients and that are most needed for its patients, because there are lots of processes connected with the war and that are used in intensive therapy and in inpatient treatment. And there is huge also range of medicine without which some patients with cardiological problems or other problems might have problems in their treatment process, because we have only 30-something% of active ingredients that are produced in Europe. And these are general and specialized active components, active ingredients. And actually, this initiative is really great. So these 250 critical medicines that are in this list, they have to be met and provided. And we also need to provide the opportunity to produce this medicine. We need to treat it very seriously, and that presupposes certain financing from different European programs as well. It seems to me that I have answered the question already, Mr. Lukasz. I would also like to add a few words to what you have mentioned conducting negotiations about the list of specific medicine, we also need to conduct inter-agencies negotiations. So, for instance, in Poland, between Ministry of Defense, Ministry of Health, it has to be discussed, and that's how the list of critical medicinal products have to be developed. That's actually it's happening right now within adaptation of European and Polish legislation. We talked about lots of topics today. I smiled a little bit because when Małgorzata was talking about innovations, I know that the company, in particular generic companies, very widely develop innovative products, and there's a wide discussions in Poland right now. What are those innovations in pharmaceutical sphere in particular? And I'm looking at Veronika. It might be a topic for separate discussion, how to understand innovations, whether it can be product innovation connected with production process. And I see that Oksana raised her hand, please. When we advocated patent reform in Ukraine to safeguard ourselves from patent trolling, we worked with the research that were given to us by the representatives of WHO and UNDP program. And we had we have interesting numbers because we saw the real amount of innovative medicine on the market and how many so-called Me Too medicines are there that are produced through not so perfect mechanism of expert system in the national area, in the nation, in the national level. Here we have amazing materials from the WHO, but those who are dealing right now with innovative business, they can share with us some kind of information. Maybe maybe situation has changed for better. Concerning access of medicine in Ukraine, just really shortly, we are reviewing in our strategy on access to medicine that was written still in peaceful times, but it turned out to be pretty flexible. And we can use it now as well. So we are reviewing as well as WHO physical and economical availability. There is before the war we did not have problems with physical accessibility. Right now we cannot have any good information because of the occupied territory. It's a huge tragedy. We have feedback from doctors that have to treat there and get medicine from aggression country, and of course aggressor country, and of course these are not high quality medicine, and we have such feedback from those doctors that have to treat people at the occupied territories. In our volunteer organization, we have pretty powerful civic society in Ukraine, and when it is challenging times, they always help the state and people living with HIV and patients organization. They are the most powerful organizations, and with the help of their volunteering capabilities, they deliver medicine and even try to deliver something to occupied territories. And if to talk about economic availability, then it's compulsory licensing, those access to generic versions. That's what I was talking about in my speech. That's what we are looking at right now as well. Thank you. Thanks a lot. I saw that Valeria also raised her hand, please. Yes, I wanted to add concerning this availability, that not only bodies that are working in particular in healthcare sphere work here, but also anti-monopoly committee of Ukraine is now conducting research and investigation, and in particular there is an investigation about discrimination of distributors, small distributors. That's how anti-monopoly committee at the end of the previous year published recommendations, mandatory recommendations, and importers and producers of medicines have to have direct contracts with distributors, not only with the big distributors that have signs of a monopoly situation on the market, but also with small ones, so that we can provide price competition and also access to medicine for the patients. And in my opinion, our country is using the best tools available in Europe and in the world. First and foremost, this is the tool that was blocked for a certain period of time, but just recently, several months ago, it was renewed. And right now we know that WHO is working on the criteria concerning that those products that have to be included and available for procurement. So we are moving toward this direction and moving pretty actively. Thank you. Thanks a lot. And also in the chat, we now have the question. I don't know whether we can answer this or not, but how about the list of medicine that have to be reimbursed, and what should be the component for such drugs that have to be reimbursed? So can you answer, please, this question? So whether there are any European normative acts that make um, include certain medicine to this to the critical medicines. No. Companies can always conduct negotiations about that and agree separately. So actually, in such lists, we have lots of medicine, but also lots of medicines taken away from such lists. So very often there is the case that medicine is excluded from such list. In Poland, we create such list every 2 months, and it's pretty high change of dynamics. Very often this dynamic is so important, and actually medical or pharmacist environment have certain problems with that. And this system implementation actually of this list for reimbursement, these changes that introduced that demand some time. For example, our law on reimbursement had certain conflicts in the sphere of doctors because certain characteristics of medicines shifted, documentation changed, and those doctors that already knew about some old medicines, they were resistant to those new documents, and we have always some disputes between doctors and Ministry of Health. I raised my hand a little bit earlier concerning the access to medicine. The only thing that I would like to mention is that reimbursement in Ukraine is pretty limited. It is more target thing that influences certain types of treatment, but it's a process. As far as I know, that at the stage of the development, Ministry of Health is trying to have higher reimbursement. And one more thing Oksana has mentioned is that right now there are changes to legislation that are going to be implemented, and they will be regulating patent matters. So here we also have the possibility to use generics and immediately use it at the very first day after finalizing, implementing all normative acts. And you already can do that. We can already be adapted to directive that is regulating access. This is directive from 2021 of the European Commission that allows as far as I know now, in the country, it is considered that submitting application about turnover, uh, the turnover, it's like a violation of patent. And according to the European legislation, this element already can be active. And it seems to me that we have to remember about that. We thinking about this day one. We are talking about this day one to immediately start working with that. We know that in the original companies there might be different companies about their patents. They all evergreen patents, but we have to be careful. This is their commercial interest. We can put it like that, of course, but. This at some point it has to come to the end, and we also mentioned the opportunity to produce for export beyond the borders of the country. And the European Commission let's do this too. So we encourage you to already implement this legislation without waiting the EU accession. Yes, it's actually a really great thing. So our discussion is coming to its end. We have one more question in the chat concerning medical products, but the market of medical products have their own normative acts, and they're very difficult, and it will be very different, and it will be difficult during our today's meeting to discuss all these matters, in particular about medicine products. I'm looking at Veronica. It might be a topic for some other joint products that we might have. And as I have already mentioned, our time is coming to the end. And now I would like to ask more general question. I would like to ask about implementation of new medicine in Europe. It's pretty long lasting product, but right now European countries, in comparison with China or Japan or the USA, they are lagging behind. If to talk about creation of new medicine or new ways of treatment, Europe, unfortunately, is not famous for its innovativeness. So the question is, what, in your opinion, should be strategic vision of the transformation of pharmaceutical sector in Ukraine, taking and in Europe, taking into account needs of patients, innovative component, and commercial interest of pharmaceutical companies that actually pay for that? Maybe let's start from Oksana, please. Yes, thank you for this question. Um, I'm really grateful to Malgorzata because actually, while advocating these changes to legislation, we are relying on those directives that Ms. Malgorzata has mentioned. That is a very useful tool for us. Mm, have to talk about expanding of needed list of the national list of medicine. It is reviewed constantly. Here I would like to mention about the transparency of this process, because for Ukraine it was very sensitive matter in the context of corruption risks. As of now, the National Health Service constantly increases packages. The medical protocol is based on certain standard developed by certain working group, the activity of which is absolutely transparent, and representatives of patient organizations are in this working group if there is a recommendation concerning certain medicine, and that is only a fee is mentioned, and active pharmaceutical ingredient is mentioned, even if we understand that right now it's one source medicine. So this package is changing all the time, but it's obvious that now during the war it's very difficult for us. But despite of that, we have very important packages for us connected with post-traumatic stress disorder. These are packages in the sphere of providing psychiatric help. You understand that for Ukraine, it's extremely important and useful right now, but also painful. So changes are happening, but it is very complicated for us. And here I also answered in the chat concerning medical products. The committee, since patient organizations, experts, the committee, and I'm the member of this working group, we are invited, and we saw that the committee already viewed and already prepared to the first reading the project of the draft law on medical products. And I would like to immediately mention that in the committee we have the subcommittee created that is headed by Olga Stefanishina, the People's Deputy. She used to be the Minister, the Deputy of Health, the Deputy Minister of Health, while Olana Suprun was the Minister of Health. She's also the head of the committee concerning all the changes that are happening in the sphere of health. It's a wide sector, but pharmaceutical sphere is also there, and it's a top priority. You have to talk about compliance with EU acquis, and only through the prism of analysis of implementation of such directives, we will have the whole list of directives, and we have to take a look at so they are not so they do not differ that much, and to implement all directives. So this is something that the process that is under public and state control in Ukraine. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Maybe you can talk something about innovative solutions. Well, let's be frank. Here, Ukrainian pharmaceutical industry is generic one concerning access to innovative medicines. There are several ways. The first way that I have already mentioned, that's such treatise of access, and this tool that we are having in Ukraine, and of course, it's the all negotiation processes with the pharmacological industry representatives, especially during the war. We need to give the credit to our partners and innovative industries that donate a lot. They donate lots of medicines for Ukraine, but at the same time, we have to, and we understand that when the war is over, we will have business as usual, and we have to be ready for that. So that's why we have to develop effective mechanisms. If we are talking about intellectual property, now it protects innovative product. Right now, for public discussion, the National Office on Intellectual Property discussed rules of expertise of applications for medicine. There is a certain separate chapter that regulates this direction. These rules are against evergreen patent, but they also at the same time protect innovative medicines. But at the same time, there are disputes that you in the European Union are familiar with, that the opportunity to patent second use. Here we have pretty heated discussion. It's understandable that during the war we do not want to patent second use. So it's understandable that innovative pharma is encouraging us to that. We are in the process of the discussion right now. Thanks a lot. So the same question I can ask to Mrs. Sinkevich, because every day she is facing with not only generic but other companies. So what are the ideas concerning strategic vision and transformation of pharmaceutical center in whole Europe so that we can be competitive in comparison with the US or China? Do we have any ideas in Europe concerning strategic development? Please switch on your microphone. No translation. I think that's a rather question to Mr. Griglavich. And I think that Ukraine will be able to even be faster than we are if to talk about innovativeness, innovative methods. I think that but Ukraine also can learn a lot from us concerning this, so we can talk and exchange experience. If you're talking about availability, that it's not a question to me, but rather to Mr. Griglavich, our expert. I would like to redirect this question to him. Thanks a lot. I actually would like to share some sad thoughts that it is rather the European Union should look at Ukraine and to see whether factors connected with the war led to the fact that healthcare matters are now on the not in the top priority. Right now, we have such discussions in the European Union where the priority of defense capabilities is higher priority than healthcare as we used as it was before. Previously, healthcare was one of the priorities for the activity of the European Union. Right now, during all the discussions, we unfortunately have this argument of increasing our defense capacities, and we are now talking about the fact that economies should be moved to military railways, and health is now not the top the biggest the highest priority. But the most important thing is that innovations cannot happen without support of state money, and it seems to me that this priority is a little bit not on the top priority right now. Maybe somebody would like to mention something among our experts, because we are already unfortunately our time has come to the end. That was very interesting discussion, but unfortunately we are finishing already. But Oksana would like to say something, please. Please. Oksana was saying something, please. Oksana, you wanted to say something? You raised your hand. Oksana or Alexandra? Alexandra, maybe. You meant Alexandra. Yes, I wanted to adjust one thing that we haven't mentioned, if it's possible, because it's an important aspect that has not been mentioned in our questions, that Ukrainian supply chain of medicine. And it seems to me that we have to talk about the fact that we in Poland also had problem with the system, with the safety of the control of this chain supply chain. It's a difficult and long-lasting process, but it seems to me that Ukrainian companies and Ukrainians were talking with Poland to somehow adapt this control, medicine control, and how we can conduct this quality control of supply as well. That's what we can add from our side. I would like to express gratitude to all who were here today. Thank you to all the experts for the meeting, and I would like to invite you to our next seminars that will be dedicated to other economy spheres, and we will inform you about those events. So thanks a lot, and I wish you peace and tranquility, because we know that energy situation in Ukraine is getting worse right now. So please keep safe. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thank you. Thank you and goodbye.